It's just PB&Z Sports Chaos. It's the playoffs. By the way, we just had the semifinals of college football take place. We'll talk NFL in a minute. Notre Dame beat Georgia. Didn't you pick Georgia? I think
No, but
I
they
picked Notre
that
Dame.
they beat Penn State, right?
I mean Penn State. I'm sorry, Penn State. That's right.
Yeah.
Penn State. You had Penn State, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It
James
was a
Franklin
tough one.
continues his streak against top
Yeah.
10 opponents. He can't beat them.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was a little bit of a snooze fest until the fourth quarter, and then that thing went completely haywire, right? And turned into
Yeah.
an epic game, right?
Yeah, it was
For
a
that.
great game. I mean, that game should have went to overtime, really.
Yeah, yeah. And then you had Ohio State handling Texas down in Cotton Bowl territory. I did pick Ohio State to win. I thought Texas would cover. They did not cover. They lost by two touchdowns on that late scoop and score by Ohio State. That was
Yeah.
unbelievable. By the Quinn Ewers' college old college roommate when he was at Texas, right? I mean, at Ohio State, excuse me. So we'll talk more about the finals. It's 2 weeks away, right? A week and a half away. I guess the 20th, Martin Luther King. But
Yeah, so
right
next
now,
weekend.
it looks like Ohio State, in my opinion, right now. I
Yeah. Yeah,
more
it's hard to
information
pick.
tells me otherwise, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was sticking with Texas only because I really thought they had a legitimate chance, but I also picked them before those in our preseason special, our preview. I
Yep.
I had Texas, so I wanted to stick with them. And you know what? They were going in to tie it at the end, and then that scoop and score just changed the game
I
completely.
didn't
So
like your play calling on that goal line drive. I did not like it one bit. Sarkisian is supposed to be this guru on offense, and there was no creativity, nothing. First of all, the first play they try to throw a pitch, and I'm like, come on, just try to bludgeon them up the middle and see what happens, and then try to
yeah,
do different, right? So
yeah.
at the point, and their running back speed was not utilized enough in that game. I mean, they got flat out burners. That kid Blue is a burner at running back. And I didn't feel like they took advantage of that at any point in the game, really. Other than the touchdown they scored before the end of the half, and then they give up that 75 yard. That was the backbreaker right there, in my opinion. That 75 yarder to Trayvon Henderson at the end of the first half, 23. I don't even know it was 23. It might have been 13 seconds left in the half, and they throw a little screen pass, and he takes that thing for basically 72 yards after the 3 yard pass.
Yeah.
To me, that was the game right there. I think because Ohio State got the ball back and they scored again at the opening of the second half. So,
Yeah.
all right, we'll see. All right, before we talk about the playoffs right now, as we know, we talked about this. Patriots already fired Mayo. Doug Peters has been let go by Jacksonville. Antonio Pierce was a little bit surprised that he was let go by the Raiders. Some people think it had a Brady footprint or fingerprint all over that, I should say. Brady may be talking to Vrabel at this point in time. Do you think the Pats need to move quickly on Vrabel? First of all, do you think Vrabel's the guy?
I mean, he's definitely the fan favorite, right? And I think he was the guy people thought they might go after last year when they hired Mayo. And I think people were surprised then that Vrabel didn't come on board. So what was the reason
Was
for
he
not?
was he actually fired by the Titans at the time the Pats picked Mayo though? Because they picked Mayo pretty much the next day
They
after they
did.
fired
They
Bill.
they did it pretty. That's a good point because I was going to say if they actually made a decision, well, they could have waited too. They could have waited and then still talked to Vrabel, unless they were afraid Mayo was going to get scooped up or something, which I don't know. But
I didn't see that
if,
happen. No.
if they did make a conscious decision to not hire Vrabel at that point in time, what was the reasoning? Like why? So what? In other words, what's changed between last year and this year that all of a sudden makes Vrabel the guy? But if they didn't make a conscious decision not to hire him, they didn't even interview him or anything, and they were just like Mayo's our guy. We're just going after Mayo. Then that would make more sense for him potentially getting in this time because they didn't have a reason not to hire him before. So that's the only thing I'm thinking about with that.
So the succession plan that was identified like for 4 years ago for Mayo back in that trip to Israel, whatever it was, right? When him and Kraft hit it off. And they interviewed no one because they had it in writing that it was a succession plan for Mayo. I think they were stuck with making that move at that point in time, whether or not Vrabel was available, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think, first of all, Kraft is the guilty one here. He let Mayo come on board with no experience, really. And
Yep.
they give him two, and he let him hire promote two coordinators with no experience at all. Well, I guess Van Pelt had a little bit of experience at Cleveland, but Covington had no experience. The defense went downhill afterwards. So I blame it on Kraft. And by the way, Brady, he's snooping around. There's a rumor out there that he's already asked Bill to talk to the Raiders organization, but I don't believe that. I think he only talked to Bill about who they think they should talk to. That's about it. I don't think he said, "Come on." I think they all know Bill's locked in North Carolina, so I
Yeah.
don't think it's happening. But this the Pats. First of all, Vrabel has been already interviewed by the Jets, right?
Right.
You got to move if he's the guy. Don't get undercut by the Jets if you really want him. You got to make that move, right?
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think ultimately he would be. I would love to see him in the role. Having some good roots with the Patriots organization is helpful. I would love it. I think it would be a great move, and I think he could make this team a playoff team. Maybe next year, if they do the right thing, they have to make a move or two. Plus, they have to have a good draft. If that happens with May as your identified franchise quarterback of the future, they could get into the playoffs, Nick. They could get like a 9-8, 10-7 record maybe next year. Remember, too, they're playing a last place schedule. So their schedule next year is not going to be like their opponents are,
True.
they
True.
play 4 out of division last place teams, right? Or
By the
3
way,
last place teams. So
last thing on Mayo. Speaking of last place, they didn't get last place. He slid down 4 picks in the draft.
right.
Was he fired because of that winning that game?
I don't think so. I don't think anybody in the NFL tanks.
By the
I
way,
mean, you can put in your backups, but if your backups aren't, you're not putting in your backups to say throw the game. The backups are going to freaking. I'm on the field. I'm playing my favorite thing in the world, football. Like I'm going to go out there and shine, just like freaking Milton did.
yeah. By the way, they had, in my opinion, if they were the last place team and they had the number one pick, they had to draft, they had to trade that no matter what. They couldn't keep that because they don't need a quarterback. And I'm not sold on any of these quarterbacks coming out. If you want Shedeur Sanders, good luck, right? So,
Yeah, it's
um,
not a good class.
no, Quinn Ewers hasn't showed me enough.
Yeah.
I'm not. There's no one that's really impressed me. I
Cam
think
Ward might be the first quarterback drafted.
could be Dylan Gabriel. I think is the most solid guy, but people are concerned that he's not that tall. I didn't realize he's only 6 feet tall. I thought he was taller than he looks like because he's a stocky guy. But yeah, you're right. Not a good quarterback class. So falling to 4 is not a bad deal after all. At the end of the day, it's not a bad deal. You still could probably draft the right guy at that point in time. You don't have to trade out of it because if you trade out of 1, you're probably not going to fall to 4 with the trade. You're going to probably end up like a 10 or
Yeah.
12, right?
Right. And
So
then the
not a
question is
bad.
going to become, do you go after the premier receiver or do you go after an offensive tackle? You might be able to get the best offensive tackle in the draft at 4 or if worst case, maybe the second best. And then build that as your, start to build. We know the game's one of the trenches, right? You got to long term, you got to have that offensive line sewed up and then try to get a receiver at the top of the second round. You can still get really good guys at the top of the second round that you can, coach up and make good.
If,
We've seen
if you do your homework, right? We took Polk this year at the top of the second round, and that hasn't panned out yet. Which I'm not ready to throw him out with the baby wash, as they say, or whatever it is. I think Polk's a really good. I watched him in Washington, man. When they went to the
right.
championship game, he was a really good receiver. I don't know what went wrong this year, why he had to drop C's, but I think he has talent. The guy that I thought they really reached on was Javon Baker. They could have had the kid from the Chargers, who Lad McConkey. They traded out. Lad McConkey was picked in that position, right? So
Lad McConkey is a perfect example of a guy that they missed on. They missed on DK Metcalf. They missed on Deebo Samuel. Those are all top second round guys, and they took other receivers ahead of those guys. So they haven't been good receiver drafters historically as a
no,
team. So you might have to go out and buy somebody. And there's some other rookies. Look at this kid McMillan for Tampa Bay. Like he's coming on strong at the end of the year. He was not
another
on
Washington
people's
kid.
radar. You know what I mean?
Yep, yep.
But so you like your point. If you do your homework, you can get a guy that can turn into a bona fide NFL receiver for Drake May. Now, what about the market too? I mean, you got to go out and look at maybe a T. Higgins or, there's people out there that they can bring into the organization that you're not taking the risk on through the draft. So that's why I said a player or two plus a good draft, they
Yeah.
could get in the playoff. I think they can get in the playoffs next year. They might need to rebuild another rebuilding year, but I don't know how long Kraft will put up with not getting to the postseason.
By the way, I will just say we'll move on real quick to other picks. The one thing I think they missed on last year with Mayo is you could put him there if you hired a veteran associate head coach. At the time, Mike Zimmer was not hired by the Cowboys yet. He would have been not the defensive coordinator, a great associate head coach that he could have picked his brain on. And that was a challenge. You had too many young people, and that screwed Mayo at the end of the day. So, by the
Yeah.
way, you mentioned offensive line. I think that's what they're going to do. And the team we're going to pick first, Chargers, Texans. Chargers are built on they made investment in offensive line in the draft for a couple of years, right?
Yeah. They got the kid from BC, right?
Yeah,
Zion.
they've
Yeah.
got some good offensive linemen they drafted. And look at lo and behold, here's the Chargers coming into this playoff game against the Texans. Texans was everybody's darling last year. I said last year they were 2 years too soon. And I think it's proven out this year. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Texans kind of, in my opinion, are like the Steelers. Like they started off strong, they kind of like faded away. They're not even like they almost don't deserve to be in the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned. Like just kind of like Pittsburgh doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs either. And those are the two teams that are playing today. They get lucky because they win their division, which is a weak division, and they get that home playoff game, which is another whole debate and story around seeding and rankings in the conferences. But
But by the way, guess
I
what? The Chargers weren't going to play at home this week, anyways, given because unfortunately, due to the circumstances in LA, right? So, because the other game's already been moved. So,
right, the Rams,
the
yeah,
Texans
yeah.
are a neutral field regardless, anyways.
Right. But all that being said, I still don't think that they've shown me enough. Obviously, Tank Dell is out. That's going to put basically Nico Collins. If you can just kind of lock him down, then you can probably easily win this game. I mean, that's the only offensive guy, in my opinion. Mixon might be able to run a little bit, but I can't see this team putting up like, you know, in the mid to high 20s to keep up with what I think the Chargers can do.
Right.
So, I think the Chargers will hit the mid to high 20s, maybe low 30s. So I'm looking at like a 28, 30, 31 kind of points for the Chargers, but I can't see Houston getting over like 17 points or so. So I'm
I'm with
going
you.
like I'm going like 30-17 Chargers on that one.
I'm with you. Chargers going all the way. By the way, Justin Herbert finally, Harbaugh's taken the plastic wrap off him. And the last few games, he's showing out and blown up. And another guy that's shown out that I've been waiting 2 years for, because when we did our draft show 2 years ago, I said he's going to be a stud receiver for the Chargers. Quentin Johnston showed up finally in that last game of the year. That he showed that he has some ball skills. So I'm looking for the Chargers to get even better going forward. They
Yeah.
win
All
this
right.
game.
I think G Money has the Chargers.
Chargers as well, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Pittsburgh goes to Baltimore. On paper, this should be a no-brainer. Pittsburgh's on a 5-game losing streak. Lamar struggles in the playoffs and struggles against Pittsburgh. He's had a wonderful year this year. He's proven all the doubters wrong, including you. What do you think happens in this game, though, with playoff Lamar?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they have. I mean, they're one of the harder teams in the league right now. It's going to be hard to pick against them. Plus, they're at home. They don't have to go on the road like the Chargers do, right? So,
I think when
but
you
if there's
have that series, it doesn't really matter.
yeah,
Those teams play the next door neighbors practically anyway. So it's
yeah,
fans are going to get to the game from either one's home
yep,
stadium, right? So
for sure. And I think if anybody can dial up a game plan to beat Baltimore, it's probably Tomlin. He sees them twice a year.
yeah, that's what
Historically,
makes me
he's played
nervous.
pretty well against them. But it's sad to say that the Pittsburgh does not have the talent to beat Baltimore. It's plain and simple. The
Right.
only way they're going to win this game is from Tomlin and game planning. If that's the key, if they can do that, and I'm not sure what that recipe looks like, but if he can dial that up, that's the only way Pittsburgh can even come close to winning this
Well,
game.
I'll add. I'm taking Baltimore, by the way. But the other thing is, if Lamar plays like playoff Lamar in the past and Pittsburgh Lamar in the past, that's the other
Yeah.
thing, right?
And then the other thing you have to keep in mind too that I mentioned the game planning, and this kind of is included into the game planning. It's not just the coaching and the game plan that has to be in it, but it's also special teams. I think that they will do a fake punt somewhere in this game. I
Yeah.
think they'll run a couple like they'll just do some things that might get a little creative because they have to have that. They got to win time of possession, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be a hard game for them to win. I'm taking Baltimore all day long, but I would love to see a close game on this one. I just think it's not going to be close. I think it's going to be a blowout. But
Oh, you do? Okay.
yeah,
I think Pittsburgh covers the 9.5 points. I don't think, but Baltimore wins.
okay. I think Baltimore covers that. I do.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
looking at like a. I think Baltimore put up a bunch of points, 31, 35 points, and Pittsburgh again maybe gets to the mid-teens, like 17 or
Well, to
something
your
like that.
point, to that happen, Derrick Henry, feed him the ball. You can't give him to him 10 or 14 times like they've done in the past with Pittsburgh. He's going to touch the ball 20, 25 times.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. This is a game that everybody said should be an easy one. I think so. But the Broncos Bills, you happen to be a guy that likes the Broncos. I think the Broncos are frauds. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Buffalo to me is they might be the team to beat because if you think about it, they're gonna win this game against Denver. Then they're gonna play Baltimore if everything goes out right. Baltimore has to go up there. And then if they all the teams work out, they're gonna end up playing Kansas City in Kansas City for the AFC Championship. And we know Buffalo can win those games. The Buffalo plays to their competition sometimes. So that's the only thing
That's the only thing I was thinking too.
that's
Same thing.
that's
I
that's
agree.
the only thing I'm concerned about because they might not take Denver for I mean Josh Allen came flat out and said, "Hey, this team came up here and beat us last year." Like they're taking them very seriously, but when it comes to the field, are they going to take them that seriously? Because they can sneak up on you with Sean Payton and the year Nix is having as a rookie.
Oh,
But
Nick's had a great year. I agree.
it's hard for a rookie quarterback though to go in and win a playoff game
Yeah.
on
Yep.
the road. There's just so much going against them. To me, Buffalo's the team. I'm probably not going to take Buffalo to win the whole thing because as long as Kansas City's there, I'm probably going to stick with Kansas City. It's a smart play, and then they would split too if they played each other, right? Because Buffalo already beat Kansas City, so it's just. But to me, they're the team. They're the team in the AFC. If anybody's going to knock off Kansas City, it's going to be Buffalo. So I'm
Tom,
taking Buffalo.
as somebody who owned Buffalo his life, what do you think? Okay, he likes it.
He
All
likes
right.
Buffalo too. All right,
Yeah.
and G Money has Buffalo too.
All right. This is where we start to go a little haywire these next three games. Packers, Eagles. I already say G Money has picked Packers in this game.
Yeah.
Hurts is coming back. They just finally let him out of concussion protocol. I'm surprised after 2 weeks it took that long. But Love's banged up a little bit. Watson's
Yeah.
out of the game, right?
Elbow. Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's Philadelphia
Yeah. And people are thinking, oh, maybe Green Bay does what they did last year as a
against
seven
Dallas.
seed or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
go
that's
into
my
a
fear.
two-seed Dallas, and then they just lit Dallas up in that game, right? And you've got a lot of the same players and stuff involved there. So can they win this game? Yeah. I mean, the line's it was started at 4.5. It went up to 5.5. So obviously the Eagles, the money's coming in on the Eagles. And I think there's a good reason for that. The Eagles are like the Ravens. They're playing hot at the right time, but we just don't know if they can make that jump in the playoffs, right? Um, so, but I'll tell you, man, Saquon is a beast.
That's what I'm
Um,
saying. You held him out from getting the record for one reason, to
to
win in
win.
the playoffs. Give him the ball. He's going to touch the ball almost 30 times, I think, between runs and passes. If he doesn't
Yeah.
get over 25, then Sirianni needs to be fired. They lose this game, in my opinion. This is Sirianni.
Yeah.
Sirianni is coaching for his life, in my opinion. If he loses this game, you've got to fire him.
Yep. Yep. I think so. That team's way too talented on both sides of the ball, right? They need to make a deep run. A deep run means at least the NFC Championship game.
I agree. I agree. The
And
number two
so,
seed. Yeah.
yeah. So I got them as well. G Money has the Packers.
Packers, I'm surprised, but okay. All right. This is another one. The Commanders, actually, by the way, I think it's going to be the most entertaining game.
Yeah,
Commanders at Buccaneers.
I agree.
Jayden Daniels balling out. And then Baker Mayfield, man. I love that kid. He just plays. He's a baller. He's a football
He's a
player.
baller.
Balls out. He had
Yeah.
a great freaking year, 40 touchdowns. The only other guy to do that in Tampa Bay history was a guy named Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? It's down in
Yeah.
Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
The other thing is Tampa Bay struggles a little bit at home. They play better on the road. I think Baker gets more excitement by the other team's fans hating him. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking for, like you said, a very entertaining, high scoring game. I think they can get up into the 70s in total points. Um, you know, on Sunday night. And man, this is a tough one. I think it's going to be a field goal game one way or the other. And I think Washington's getting 3 points right now. So I would lean towards betting Washington with the points in that regard. Um, but we just talked about Jayden Daniels being Bo Nix being a rookie,
Rookie,
playing
right,
in the
right,
first
right,
playoff game as a
right.
rookie. Same thing with Jayden Daniels. No playoff experience. This is his first game
And
as
by the
a
way, Winfield is back, and Dean, the cornerback, is back for Tampa Bay. Huge. Winfield, I think, is one of the 3 or 4 best safeties in the NFL. That's a huge thing to have him coming back for this game, fresh,
yep.
healthy, hopefully. So I got Tampa Bay all day long. So does G
Yeah,
Money.
yeah, I'm going the other way on this one. I just think if there's a rookie quarterback out there that can make a play, it's Jayden Daniels, and that's why I'm going to because this game is going to come down to making a play when you need to make a play,
Yeah, he can make
and
it with his legs. He might not make it
and
with his arm, but he'll make it with his legs. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's what it's going to come down to. Field goal game either way. There's going to be that last minute drive. Someone's going to make a stop, and someone else is going to take it down. It could be the other way around, and it's Tampa that wins it for that reason. But I'm looking for a
See,
very, very entertaining game.
last week they were down in that game. They had to win to get the division title. Baker ran the ball a few times, ran over people. I don't think he let this team lose the game. Baker's tougher than people think he is. So I got
Yeah.
that. I get them. All
All
right.
right.
Vikes and Rams. This game has been moved to Glendale, Arizona, so it's no longer a home game for the Rams. It's a neutral game. I'll just say right now, I think that chaos, Rams players are probably thinking about their families. They're probably, all that stuff is in the back of their mind. Too many distractions. I know you said when you said if Detroit loses, I mean, if Minnesota loses to Detroit and have to go on the road, they're probably one and done. I don't see it. I think Minnesota wins this game.
Yeah, I got Minnesota as well, and that would put Minnesota back in Detroit for the second round, well, no, not in my scenario because I have Washington winning. So
Yeah, yeah.
Washington would have to play Detroit, and then Minnesota would play Philadelphia if that worked out that way based on our picks.
Yep.
But based on your picks, Minnesota would have to go back to Detroit because Tampa would be playing Philadelphia, right?
Yep. That would be
Yeah,
G Money is the Rams, by the way.
I'm
I
going
mean, I like
Vikings.
the Rams. Koopa and Puka, they're tough, but I think the Vikings just have too much at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
I agree. They were a 1 point favorite when it was in LA. And since they moved to Arizona, they got another point and a half up. So now they're favored by 2.5. I mean, obviously, money's coming in on Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota's a talented team. I mean, I think a lot of people are just thinking about last week. Minnesota got their asses handed to them by Detroit, and everyone's kind of thinking about that game. So
Yeah,
it's going to be.
Donald kind of slipped a little bit. He showed the old Donald in that game. So
He
yeah,
did.
that's the point.
Yep. And the Rams, McVay is no dummy. Are they gonna
No,
are
it's
they
not.
gonna use
That a Super Bowl
is
title.
are they gonna use the blueprint right from that game and use that against Minnesota? Or does Minnesota bounce back and be the resilient Minnesota Vikings that we know and not what we saw last week? So I think a lot of people are just thinking about last week, and that's why they're potentially taking the Rams in this one. But I'm going Vikings.
I am too. I'm rolling Vikes. G
And
Money is rolling the Rams, though.
the Rams. Okay.
All right. All right, man. I think so. We were other than the Commanders game, you and I were in alignment on 5 of them. G Money though, he had the Packers. He had he did have the Bucks, and he had the Rams as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, so he's different on those two. All right.
Yep.
All right. We'll see what happens. This should be a good weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Pony
Yep.
up. Go.
Wildcard weekend.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.